Brilliant. Okay, gents, what you fancy?
What?
Well, we're in a bit of pickle if you out of your skull, mate.
All I heard was pickle.
You having a laugh by taking a piece in it?
Come again?
If you're getting proper chuffed because you're all full coat and no knickers, we can crack on then, and Bob's your uncle.
I do have an uncle named Bob.
What are you on about?
Okay. Forget this. We're gonna bring Paul in.
Oh, mate, I'm chuffed for this episode. It's gonna be a cheeky one.
Oh, shut off! Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that's going to take any opportunity it can to mock the British. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm Paul.
And we are back. Now, if you're listening to this episode, you're listening to it right after my birthday. It's been about a month since it was Brian's birthday. It's probably around my anniversary. I'm going to Costa Rica soon, which doesn't really factor into this, but it's just a flex I wanted to throw at you. But for my birthday and Brian's birthday, you know what you can do? You can subscribe. You can go find us on YouTube. We also have a YouTube channel as well. And so we have more episodes than we have on our Spotify or any of our podcast platforms. So we have every episode we've done on YouTube. Isn't that right, Brian?
That's true. That's why I made the YouTube channel, because that way you can have our full catalog. And also on YouTube, I made playlists. You can look, here's all of our Office episodes. Here's all of our Star Wars episodes, all of our Survivor episodes. You can kind of
all of
choose
the episodes
what area.
All of them.
I thought about doing different ones with guests, but I haven't done a playlist like that yet.
I mean, I'm really the only one that would be that essential that you would need to do an entire playlist for just me.
He is, yeah, that's true. We're gonna fatten you up here with compliments, and then
I've done a lot of episodes.
You have? Are you 7 or 8?
No, this is 12.
Yeah, that's I knew that. Shut up.
That's playlist worthy right there.
It is.
Yeah.
12 episodes of your playlist. You're a playlist guest. Hey, Brian, what is the YouTube name? What is our name on YouTube? Is it just TV Guys?
TV Guys Podcast.
There it is. TV Guys Podcast. You'll find us. It's great. Well, Paul, it's good to have you back now in your 12th time here. We haven't had you on for a little bit. So in the last, let's say, 3 months, what TV have you been watching? Any new shows? I know you mentioned one older one that you've been watching, but any new ones you've been seeing?
You know, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but I loved The Day of the Jackal.
Which is that again?
So it's on Peacock, and it's basically a remake. It was a movie, but it was originally a book by Frederick Forsyth. I think it was in the 70s. Phenomenal book. One of my favorite books. One of the best fiction books I've ever read. And it's basically the story of an assassination attempt on the president of France. But like the TV series has kind of taken the character from that movie and from that book and some of the iconic things that he did, and modernized it and turned it into a series. And so season 1 wrapped up sometime last year, and it's already slated for season 2. It's probably going to come out sometime next year, but it was awesome.
It's got Eddie Redmayne, who's an Oscar winner. So
I recognize that name, but I can't place him. He
was in Les Mis. He was the Marius, the starstruck love guy.
I never saw that. So that means nothing to me.
He's been in a number. He won for The Dutch Girl, which I don't think you saw that one. He was in Jupiter Ascending as, I think, a bad guy. I never saw that, but okay. You can look it up. And Eddie Redmayne.
Yep.
It's definitely it's one of those shows. It is very much like, you know, your action packed. Like there's car chase scenes and all that, you know, kind of like Bourne Identity stuff, but I think it's really smart too. And you're just constantly guessing what's going to happen next. And I think it's really, really well written. And it diverts a little bit from the story in the actual book because, well, I won't get into that, but I would highly recommend it.
Awesome. And then you were saying you were rewatching How I Met Your Mother all these years later so far. Yeah. Does it hold up?
You know, we've really enjoyed it. We're about I don't know, 6 or 7 episodes into the second season at this point. And I mean, I think the early days are pretty good for How I Met Your Mother. Like, just establishing the characters. You kind of forget like some of the things that were happening at the beginning. Like, even like I had totally forgotten that Marshall and Lily had broken up for
Oh yeah.
months right before their wedding. So
half a season, pretty much.
yeah.
So, are you still a Ted Mosby defender?
Okay, I think
Why'd you get him
guys are
started?
criminally unfair to Ted, and I think if you actually went back and watched from the beginning, I think there are things that they added to his character to keep the thing going. I think he's a much more defensible character, especially in the early seasons, where he's just kind of a hopeless romantic that's lost his way a little bit.
I will give to you that Ted is as bad as Robin or Lily. Probably not as bad as Barney, who's should be behind bars. But Marshall is like the only like cream of the crop, sort of morally upstanding gentleman of that group.
Out of the main characters,
they
you're
are
not
flawed
committing
characters, but he's still a well-written character.
Okay, so we're not here to talk about How I Met Your Mother, although we did talk about that recently. So a couple episodes back, we were joined by Alex, and we talked about Slap Bet. So if you hadn't listened to that episode, go listen to that. We've done more promos in the first like 10 minutes of this episode than we've done in like the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's true. We don't promo ourselves. Maybe not enough on the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, but that's all right. We'll do a little bit of self congratulation was I think the word I was going to say, which I don't think is correct at all. But
nope.
It's all right. It's my birthday. I can say whatever I want to. But we are here to talk about The Office. And so we've watched the U.S. Office. We love the U.S. Office. We've talked about that ad nauseum. But we haven't really talked too much about the UK Office. And up until the last week, I haven't even seen anything outside the pilot. So we all rewatched the UK Office. I know, Paul, you watched it a while ago and you rewatched a little bit. And then Brian, you watched it all for the first time in the last like week or two.
Yep, I hadn't even seen the first pilot. I had seen a couple scenes here and there, and I was always aware of it, but I never actually watched it until this past week.
All right. So what are either of you guys? What's your broad impressions of the UK Office before we start the comparisons?
The hardest part for me getting started, this is just personally, I'm not a huge Ricky Gervais fan in general, but it's hard because I mean he was great as the role of David Brent, and it's almost impossible to compare it because I was talking to Matt earlier. The Office UK is 12 episodes and a Christmas special, and I looked at the equivalent of the US Office. You wouldn't have even gotten to Jim's house party where Dwight and Angela are in the doghouse making out. You wouldn't have even gotten to that point in the series. That's how few episodes there are of this show to compare. So when you're thinking about who's better or what storylines are better, it's hard to compare like a handful, like half a season to 9 years, which is the biggest thing that is the hard part to compare them.
I think that the biggest thing about the UK Office is it's very British, which means it's deeply cynical and not very heartwarming at all. It's just pure, uncomfortable comedy, and it's definitely like I think it's a lot faster moving than the US Office. Like a lot more happens. The storyline develops much more quickly because they don't have a 20 season episode to play out the storyline.
Well, Tim asked Donna out in like the third episode.
It's they don't have to milk for the 20 some episodes, even though the first season of the US Office was also an abbreviated season comparatively. But I like what you said about the cynicism of Britain, because there really is, and this I joked about it in our intro, but this really is something that we see pop up in British culture a lot, that there's such a pervasiveness in their culture of like the stiff upper lip, the composed English gentleman sort of thing. but there's a bit of this snobbery and this posh and poise that they have, that in doing so, their comedy is aimed at really tearing people down and to really make these characters or people look so much less than how a person should be. And so because of that, it's a little harder to be endeared to these characters. And the same thing you said about the cynicism. I mean, the end of season 2, before, my guess is that there was a significant amount of time before they decided they were going to do a Christmas special, but it felt like their series finale of season 2 was that they were going to be like, we're going to end it on a bummer. Well, David Brent loses his job. Tim gets rejected by Dawn. Oh well, life is that way. And it's like, what? This is not uplifting at all. This isn't even a cliffhanger. This is just, well, sometimes life sucks.
But Gareth gets to be manager.
True. Which is also a bad thing if you're looking at it from that way.
True, yeah. And I don't think, as much as be like British humor, some of their jokes, especially their like inappropriate jokes, went a lot farther than the U.S. they would be allowed to in the U.S. There's a couple of things I noticed that I said they would not be allowed to show that in the U.S. Specifically when the item that Tim was going to be hiding in David's office.
Yeah, the adult toy.
Yes.
I mean, we can say that. That's
yeah,
the
I'm not sure, but yeah. But like, they didn't just talk about it; they showed it on screen. I don't think they would. I don't think because in the office, the U.S. office, remember Michael and Ryan are in like the sex toy shop, and everything's blurred out.
Yeah, and they don't.
And they were just looking
interact with the material at all. It's just Michael's giggling the entire time, and Ryan makes a joke to the camera about it.
Yeah, and like there's a couple of things like that where it's like, okay, yeah, I don't think this would be allowed in the U.S. based on standards and practices for NBC on a Thursday.
100%, absolutely, right. And there are different standards too, of course. I mean, Ricky Gervais drops an F-bomb in the final episode. That was the one I noticed. I don't remember if there was any other ones, but I think that was the only one.
Was it not bleeped?
Yeah,
I thought he went, oh, bleep.
That one wasn't. That one they kept it in.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a very different censor system. I mean, there's like, I remember being in the European Union when I was a kid, although it wasn't called that, it was just Europe back then. And that like you walked by a newsstand and there's like pictures, and it wasn't like a pornographic magazine, but there are like nudity pictures on these magazines that was just like, this is their news magazine, that they're okay that they can have this, or like a giant billboard with like all these people that are naked from behind. I'm like, why are we able to see that on a billboard in Europe? But they just have different standards for what they censor out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it is hard to talk about the UK office in a vacuum, because I mean, we love and have come from the US office so much, and I imagine you're doing the same thing as you're watching it. You're like substituting Dwight in for Gareth or Jim in for Tim. Hey, Jim, Tim, that was
didn't do a whole lot of work there.
Yeah. So in comparing the two, what are some things that you walked away with that you noticed?
There's a lot of episodes you can tell, like there's their safety. It wasn't a safety meeting. It was like they had a group meeting episode, which had another guy coming in to facilitate it. Was you can clearly see became the Bones for Diversity Day, or David going and doing the seminars. They did that. They did that on The Office. The Christmas party. They did that. There's a lot of things. I'm thinking, okay, this like. In my head, just have to remind myself, no, the other office based it off of this because this one came first. Yeah. You can see there's, even though it's only not as much, there's a lot that they took and they used for the other office.
The second episode, actually, that was the one I caught, where it was they were handing out the picture, like the very lewd picture of David Brent's face on the body of like a naked woman.
Yep.
And she was like, who did this? And like was tearing him up, and they finds out Chris Finch did it, who is the David Packer of The Office. Right. And that, when hearing that, my mind jumps to the episode where he poops on his carpet, which again, the sensibilities of the US, they never even talk about what it is. I was stupid at the time. I'm like, what did he do on the carpet? What did he throw up? Like
he made soup.
I didn't understand that it was he was supposed to have pooped because they didn't even say that. Like they didn't go. You can say poop on US TV. It's fine, but
They also use that bit for later when with Gabe, when someone made a derogatory thing about Gabe, and Gabe's like, "Oh, who made this about me?" It was
Yeah.
the same thing. But anyway, there's a lot of that going in there. But you're right, it even though both offices seem to be like the general, like, how do I describe it? A mundane office world, not supposed to be glammed up. This seemed even like Paul said, even more dreary, even more like soul sucking than Dunder Mifflin could be.
For sure. I think one of the, like, if there's obviously the comparison of the storylines in the different episodes that kind of lined up, or the different plot lines that lined up, even like the Jim and Pam relationship, but then like the actual like one-to-one character comparisons with like Jim and Tim, I found myself several times thinking, it doesn't feel like this is something Jim would do.
Yeah.
Like even there was the episode where Ricky is playing guitar and singing and talking about his days when he used to be in a band, and you have Gareth and Tim start singing along, and it's like Jim would be like, head in hands, like what is going on here, and he's like egging him on at that point and singing along with it. It's like, oh yeah, that's right, this is a different character. But
yeah, they have Andy Bernard to do that in the US. Right.
Yeah, definitely. That was an Andy Bernard move for sure. But then afterwards he's like, oh my goodness, can you believe that? It's so there's still that, like, he's aware that he's being sarcastic or whatever, but he's egging him on a little bit more than Jim probably would have.
Yeah.
But with that aside, I do think that the Jim and Tim is the closest comparison of the counterparts. I think the Jim and Tim are closer to each other than the other counterparts are, in my opinion.
They even reused a similar arc too when he comes back after like his promotion, and he's trying to take himself more seriously, and they did that in season 3 when Jim comes back from the Stanford branch. And there's a lot of that early arc between Jim and Pam versus Tim and Dawn that we see reflected really well, and then the rest of it, it's not even that close. So if we talk about, like, for instance, Steve Carell or Michael Scott versus
Ricky Gervais or David Brent.
David Brent. Yeah. If we talk about those two, like Ricky Gervais, I keep coming back to the cynicism, but that's kind of his brand of comedy. It's his brand of comedy is very put down and very attacking. And so when he's like telling his jokes, you have the bare bones of I want people to laugh, but I don't believe it as much from Ricky Gervais because he's at the expense of other people. Where Michael Scott has a lot more naivety, and I don't want to say innocent because it's still mean, some of the stuff he does, but he's like a child a lot more, where he's not trying to hurt people. He's trying to get them to laugh and enjoy it, and he just doesn't know where the limits are, and it feels a lot less mean-spirited than
I would say after season 1 especially.
Yeah.
Because season 1, he's more unlikable. And I think, I mean, and they even made the point that they needed to shift his character to be
that was intentional.
If they wanted to have a long run. So,
yeah, absolutely. How about
because they realized that David Brent, like, long term, you don't want to have someone unlikable for that long. So, and they rightly were hoping that the U.S. office was going to go longer. So yeah, we need to make Steve not like completely the heart of the show. I mean, and not completely like the sweetheart of the show, but like more likable that you can root for him.
Yeah. How about the Dwight Gareth comparison? Because I felt like Gareth was a bit more pervy, but that's also par for the course of just the whole show being a little bit more sexual than the U.S. office was.
I think Dwight is generally more intelligent than Gareth. Like, Gareth is dumber than Dwight. Like, it seems like Dwight is always has a master plan and is always up to something, where Gareth is more to the extreme of I just want to like make the boss happy, and he's not as conniving as Dwight maybe was.
No, and that also, I mean, goes to not having enough episodes. They didn't have the rich backstory of Dwight. He didn't get to have an Angela. He didn't get to have the farm and have everything about him. So that by the time in the 9th season that Dwight became manager, you were kind of rooting for him. Whereas this was like, oh, he's manager. That's okay. Kind of like you were saying, it's the ending is not really a great ending because it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. I think Dwight and Gareth have the same social intelligence, but Dwight is a lot more capable than Gareth, even if he doesn't quite know how to work with other people or interact with them well.
Mm-hmm.
Some other characters that they had this Jennifer Taylor Clark, who was a bit more of the Jan stand-in, but then they kind of also combined her and Neil Godwin. And so it was kind of, when I first was watching that, the Neil and Jennifer, it felt like Jan and Josh from those earlier seasons, but then it's almost like they flipped spots and that Neil became more of that Jan, where it's like, I'm really sick of you. You have to do better than this, that sort of thing. So it kind of felt like there was a lot of crossplay between those four.
Well, Jennifer was Jan in the early seasons before she went crazy. And in the beginning, Neil was the Josh. Because remember, they said it's either your branch or Neil's branch. Who's going to be a manager? Mm-hmm. But then Neil kind of became like, you already didn't like David Brent. You needed like a second tier villain to kind of, and that's what Neil was.
Yeah. We have is it just me or did he disappear after the 3rd episode? The temp, the Ricky Howard versus Richard, not Richard. Why am I?
Ryan
what's
Howard.
His name? Ryan Howard. Thank you. I know names, I promise. So did after the trivia one, did he kind of disappear, or was he in other ones and I just missed it?
If he was in the background.
Okay.
He did kind of disappear.
We also have anything that you guys want to share about that comparison?
There's really nothing to say. That was kind of a nothing character.
Yeah.
I don't really remember a lot.
You know who I do remember is Chris freaking Finch versus the Todd Packer, because you don't like Todd Packer in the U.S. office. I don't know, because I said before we started that I think Chris Finch is maybe a little more tolerable, but it sounds like you disagree, Brian.
Well, there was the episode where I forget, it was one of the background office people, but the prank was, let's hold a guy down and rip his pants off to expose him.
Correct.
It's like, that's like jail sexual harassment. Todd Packer never went that far.
You're right.
I think Finch is worse than Packer. He's maybe less annoying because he doesn't talk like this. But he's pretty horrendous.
You know, kind of the assault crime kind of turned me around on the comment. I was never saying he was fine or a good character. I just remember like having a visceral reaction to Packer. But you said that Packer never did that. I think not on camera. I really have a hard time believing Packer wouldn't do something like that and in his life, but we just never saw it.
But I think there's enough people in the U.S. office, like Angela or Oscar, or people who would be like, okay, this is too far. I'm calling corporate,
Well, not in the office. I just could see him just doing that,
That's true. Especially like when they're in Florida and they're both trying to sleep with Nellie to get the job. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we have a better 1-to-1. We have the Keith and Accounts versus Kevin. Kevin is absolutely much funnier. Kevin is hilarious, but I do have to say Keith did give me the funniest moment in this show.
I agree. If it's the same moment I'm thinking of, was his review.
His review was the funniest part of this entire show. I loved it because what it allowed Ricky Gervais to play a straight man, and he does really well with that, and his frustration in it is great back and forth.
Like, I don't know. Like Kevin, I think would naively think that he is the best at every question.
Yeah.
But Keith is like, I don't know. I don't know. And he never has a react. He's monotone the entire time. I don't think I ever heard an inflection from Keith the whole time.
If you couldn't put, I don't know, what would you say? Very much agree. Do you remember what the question was? No. He's a Path of Least Resistance character, and that was a funny moment to highlight that.
Yeah, he's like the only one, the only one of the background office people who I think has a clear one-to-one. You were saying that there was the one guy who early on was kind of a Stanley, but that was just based on like one line. But there's no Phyllis or Angela or Meredith, but he's like the only one of the supporting cast that really stood out.
Yeah, Malcolm is a little like Stanley because they gave Malcolm's lines in the pilot to Stanley. Because when we watch the pilot, if you watch the U.S. pilot versus the UK pilot, there's a lot of like exact same lines. There's a couple of exact same moments with like the stealing, Pam was stealing, we're going to fire her, or the stapler and Jell-O, and like some of the exact same jokes in that pilot episode. And so in the Superfans cut, Stanley has some of Malcolm's lines, and they are very not Stanley, where it's like, yeah, Michael, I trust you. Stanley that we know and love would never say that.
Yeah.
Never. So
I don't think if anyone other than Dwight would say that to Michael.
Holly.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the beginning.
And then we did have Donna, who came in and dated Tim. And at first when she came in, I thought of like Amy Adams actually from the Hot Girl episode. But then she stuck around for a little bit, and I felt like that was a little bit more Karen. But again, that even wasn't that like 1-to-1. It was just
it was she was nothing. She was very much a more bubbly, flirty personality than Karen was, but she filled the same role as Karen, as like the woman that Dawn has to see Tim dating while she can't act like she's upset because she is with Lee.
And the UK version, it's a plot point. In the US version, there's actually a character there.
Yeah.
So like they actually went on to develop that character, and I mean they just didn't have time to do that in the UK version.
Yeah.
And even the development they gave Rashida Jones, it was a fine arc, but it was a little limited versus what they could do, even though they had almost a full season to do it with her. I felt like they kind of did Karen dirty a little bit.
Well, I don't know that they fully expected her to be gone that quickly, because Parks and Rec came along, and I think that's ultimately why she left.
Yeah, I think she would have left at some point, but maybe it wouldn't have been so abrupt.
Yeah. Speaking of Parks and Rec, so as of the recording of this episode, yesterday was the anniversary of Parks and Rec. It was the 16-year anniversary. So Parks and Rec, April 9th, 2009. 2009. 2009.
To this day, that show has the best outtakes of pretty much any show ever in history, and mostly due to Chris Pratt. But I mean, they are hilarious.
I enjoy shows that they'll get their lines and everything, and then they're like, let's just do a take, just do what you want, and then you can get some hilarious stuff out of that.
Yeah, and a lot of it with both Office and Parks, they left a lot of that stuff in.
Yeah.
But so back to the character comparisons. So I wanted to get to Lee versus Roy.
Oh yeah, I completely missed him. Sorry.
And we haven't even really talked about Pam and Don. But first, Lee and Roy. Lee somehow makes Roy seem like a great boyfriend in comparison.
well, Roy is less jerky.
Yeah.
I mean, he has his moments like when he freaks out. He obviously has some anger issues he needs to work through, but he's not like actively snarky and putting people down. He's just really self-absorbed.
Right.
Yeah, like he's so mean to Dawn. Like you're rooting. It's almost like you're rooting for Tim more than Jim. I don't know if that's blasphemous to say, because Lee is so much worse than Roy.
And I think if they would have made Roy like that in the US version, I don't think that's believable. Like I don't think Pam would stay with somebody
Mhm.
like a Lee.
But let's be honest, Roy had the same amount of support as Lee did, where Roy still, if Pam had dreams, Roy would crush them, but not in a mean-spirited way. He just didn't believe in his fiance.
Right.
He didn't see her for who she was. And that is just, maybe, I don't know if it's just as damaging, but it is still very damaging for a relationship. And so you still do very clearly root for Jim because he does see her. Just even that first season where I think it's the basketball game where Roy's like, "Oh, I'm glad that she, has someone that she can just, say or like bother and vent and whatever." He's like, "Yeah, I like talking to her too." Just the way that they both view conversations with her.
Yeah, but even in that moment, Roy, in his mind, he doesn't realize that he said something kind of insulting.
Yeah.
And then, but like the episode also in the U.S. office where Pam's mom comes, and all of a sudden Roy comes up in like a sweater vest. He's like, "Hi, how you doing? I'm great, Roy." Like I couldn't even see Lee putting on a show like that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this breed too. Like looking at British culture, there is this time of these breeds of guys in this British culture who are like very against what is expected of a man in Great Britain. And so they're very much like, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to contribute nothing. And I'm going to expect to receive and receive and receive. And so it's like, we have laziness here in America. I mean, we probably like put a stamp of approval on laziness here in America, but the way it looks in Britain is just very childish, very like bucking any expectation anyone have, and like, how dare you have expectation of me to be a contributing member of society.
Yeah.
So any other characters? And I know we didn't talk too much about Dawn or Pam like you said. Is there anything?
I'm curious to hear which one, like who do you prefer, Dawn or Pam, and why?
I've always liked Pam. Part of it was when I started watching it, I thought Jenna Fisher was cute. So I mean, cuteness goes a long way. And so you see past personality defects, I think, but when you rewatch it later with a smarter head, you see some of the defects of Pam and some of her passivity, versus Dawn had a lot more zest, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can't say that I like Dawn more than Pam because I mean, I've been watching The Office for what 20 years now. I mean, I got caught a couple of those later, maybe like 17 years. Plus, with like the Office Ladies podcast, like Pam and Jenna Fisher is just so ingrained in that role.
Yeah.
But I still think that Lucy Davis did a great job as Dawn, and I think it may have been a different story if I had watched the British Office first.
Yeah, I actually think she's a stronger character. I think for likability factor, I think Pam's more endearing.
Well, and it's interesting when you compare the ending of Tim and Dawn finally getting together, because he said the finale, the not kind of the Christmas special, it was oh, they're not together, the end. And then even in the Christmas special, until the very end, you still don't think they're going to get together until she walks in the end. And it's almost like that's like almost a more satisfying ending, because Jim and Pam get together in the end of season 3, beginning of season 4, and then from then on, it's like, oh, okay, they're there, but like that will they won't they tension is gone for the remainder of the series. But if the British Office had continued, it would have been the same for them.
Yeah, if you compare just the amount of time that we had with Pam in the first season and a half versus the amount that we had with Dawn, there's a very shy, passive Pam. We see a stronger Pam who finds her voice along the way in different seasons. But yeah, she's a wallflower for the first season and a half, and probably a little bit longer than that. Season 3 is her coming out arc of finding who she is a bit more.
Well, and Pam had more to do with Michael than Dawn did with David.
Yeah,
sure.
That is a much better relationship too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that's what we got for characters. But are there a couple of it? We already mentioned one of our favorite moments, but are there a few favorite moments or favorite episode that you have of the UK Office?
I loved the I don't know. I still think of it as like the sensitivity training episode or whatever, but like the one where the guy comes in from corporate to do the training, and one of my favorite moments in that entire sequence is when David Brent is saying how he used to be a part of a band, and at some point Don, he asked, does anybody, he's clearly trying to move on, does anybody have any questions for David, and tries to rush it along, and he's like, oh, give him an opportunity, and you can just see like Don at that point, I think it's Don that's like, oh, were you any good? and you can just see like the joy draining out of his face there, like, oh no, here we go. And he ends up picking up his guitar and sing. I mean, that was probably my favorite episode. I really enjoyed that one.
No, that was, and that's like the blueprint for diversity. That was another one of the greatest episodes. I also love towards the end, and normally I'm not a huge fan of extra cringe humor, but when he's on the blind dating show dressed as Austin Powers and none of his jokes are landing, it's like, oh my god, just stop. But he did it he committed so well to that bit.
It was a good setup of the joke too, for him to do the Austin Powers joke, and before she finishes the question, and the question was like, what character are you the most like, leaving the door open for him to do an impression, but because he was so quick to get it out and the timing died, like he completely botched a great response he could have had.
Yeah. Oh, then he made his music video, which was like,
that's right.
Like trying, like, in what world can, even in universe, can David Brent watch that and not see it's comedic?
That was a funny one. I did like the Christmas special overall. I did like, that moment was really funny. I think also, of course, when you just want like good things to happen for people, you are excited to see Tim and Don wind up together. And then also him finding a woman that doesn't immediately like hate him, and you can see him soften a little bit in his try hard to make people like him sort of behavior.
And towards the end, I realized it wasn't so much that I was rooting for him to do well with him because I cared about David Brent. It's more like, okay, she's in the car. Don't say something that's going to ruin it. Like, don't give us another stupid cringe moment. And then when he didn't, it's like, okay, cool. Because they easily could have had, at the very last minute, he said something inappropriate and then ruined it. But I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah. Me too. Well, I also have here the worst moments, and I'll go first because there's a lot of worst moments. So people talk about like the cringiness of The Office. UK Office, I feel like ramps it up. The only time the US Office comes close to the cringiness of UK Office is with Scott's Tots, in my opinion. Yeah. There is a lot of hard to watch moments and episodes. I'm like, thank God they toned this down for the US version, because I could not have watched 7 or 8 seasons of that level of cringe.
Brutally uncomfortable, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, one of those is in the Christmas party where the girl who was pregnant, who kind of took the spot at Garrett's death by Tim, and she basically asks the guy, hey, can you not smoke in front of me because I'm pregnant? And he just goes off on her, but like, oh, I'm going to smoke where I want. It's not my problem. You got pregnant. And he's saying it in much worse language than that. But like, that was one of the most cringy moments to me, I think.
Okay, it's the same episode where there's like the computer image of him floating around, but is it like his niece that he brings?
Oh yeah,
the office or whatever, and just like some of the things that, like when they're all like making jokes about her at the beginning, and I don't even remember who it was. Somebody said something like, and he's like, "That's too far." They were all too far, but it was just incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah. What else was there?
Sorry, I was just loading something up here. The dance off that he has, where like the other guy, what was it, Neil, had shown like, and that was a really like good job. The Neil did this dance with the I think it was Donna that he joined with, and that they did like the Saturday Night Fever stuff, and that was really well done, and it wasn't like too flashy, too showboaty. It was just a fun little thing. I would have loved it if I was in the office, be like, "Hey, good job." But he's like, "I have to one up that." So he starts doing the dance, and everyone's just like so uncomfortable with him just demanding their approval.
They wrote that scene backwards just so they could have they wanted to get to him doing that dance because I guess that awkward dances was something that Ricky Gervais had done before, and they wanted to get it into the show, and so they reverse engineered that scene, knowing that it's going to end up with that dance.
Yeah, it was also hard for like anytime it's like let's just let David Brent go for it, like the motivational speech that he gave.
Oh yeah,
We're just like no one is buying into it. It's one thing for Michael Scott to do those in the meetings, and then you have the relief of like Jim mocking it or the reaction of them like having fun making fun of Michael Scott. But this one is just like, let's see how uncomfortable you can feel by him presenting the way he's presenting.
Mm-hmm. And right at the beginning, get out, get out, get out. I have expected the room to start to file out. Just like, all right, I guess we're not doing this.
Oh man. All right. Well, is final rating, like maybe scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate US off or UK Office? And additionally, would you recommend it to people who haven't watched UK Office and love the US Office? Brian, you go first.
This is hard.
That's what she said.
That's okay. That was easy.
That's also what she said.
Yes. Okay, I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's good, but not great. And I would definitely recommend it. But I personally think that it's better watching the U.S. Office first than going back. I know a lot of people think that's completely wrong, and there's a lot of diehards who say the UK Office is ride or die the best. But there are people out there who think that.
And
but
those
for me,
people are wrong. Those people are named Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant. Those are the ones who say that.
Yeah. But no, I mean, obviously, I would rate the U.S. Office much higher, but I'll give UK Office a 6.5.
All right, Paul, what do you think?
I'd say I'd probably rate it pretty similarly, in the sixes. I think the only if you're going to make the comparison between the US and the UK Office and make a case for the UK Office, the US Office had season 8 and 9, and it went past its prime. Where this is like what, 15 episodes or whatever. So I mean, it's really like they kind of hit the sweet spot and like quit at the right time. And I think if it would have gone any longer, it would have been pretty unbearable because it doesn't have the charm of the U.S. Office. So yeah. I would say, as far as like asking the question, would I recommend it to somebody else? It's a great question because I would have to just qualify that by saying it depends on who I'm talking to. Because I tried to watch a few episodes with Laura and she did not care for it. And I think you have to have a little bit of a darker sense of humor and a little bit more tolerance for the cringe humor if you're going to really enjoy this. And if it's the right person, man, definitely it's a recommend, because there's definitely some great humor in there. But if that's not really their cup of tea, they're not going to enjoy it.
So you recommend it to your brothers?
Probably, yeah. But like the reason I wanted to do this episode, it makes it so interesting, is I've listened to so many podcasts about the U.S. Office, both with Office Ladies and with Brian Baumgartner's podcasts, and they've said so much that everyone involved in making the U.S. Office such revered the UK Office. In the beginning, when the word was going around, oh yeah, we're doing an American remake of The Office, so many people said, oh no, you can't do that, you're going to ruin it. It's so great, you need to leave it untouched. And like so many of the actors and producers of the U.S. Office thought it was like the greatest thing. So I'm like, okay, I got to see what this hype is about. And I don't know, for me, like I said, it didn't really live up to the hype that I was hearing about from all these people.
Yeah. So for me, I would probably put it at a 4 out of 10. I could count the amount of laughs I had on one hand, but if I was going to recommend it to someone, I'd say, hey, just watch the redundancies episode, or just the part even with Keith and David, because that part was really great and just really good situational comedy, and you don't need to have too much backstory to enjoy just that moment. But outside of that moment, there's a handful of laughs outside of it, but it's just overall it was more of a slog to get through, a lot more uncomfortable, and just like you said, Paul. It's only 12 episodes, and I watched it all in 1 week, but it's still I could have done better things with my time. So,
Sure.
but I mean, now I know, So if you're one of those like I love The Office, the U.S. version, well, watch this so that you can say, now I know.
I think
keep
it gives you an
listening, 'cause
appreciation for
Yeah.
it. Like, I mean, the idea certainly sparked something that became something great. And without the UK office, we wouldn't have the American office.
Correct, 100%.
Yep. And we're going to spend the next 12 episodes of TV Guys going through every episode in detail, or not.
How dare you? All right. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. What do you guys think? Anything
That's
else?
all I got.
Perfect. Well, let's jump into trivia, because last week we talked about Paul's favorite thing, Muppets. We talked about Sesame Street specifically, and Paul's huge fan of anything puppet related.
Hey, we didn't even mention the Power Rangers once on this episode, so I'd say this
You did.
Yeah. This time it's you.
Put a quarter in yourself. You played yourself. No, that's not how it goes. All right. Hey, Brian, why don't you hit us with last week's trivia? You're the one who had it.
Yeah, we briefly mentioned the Sesame Street 50th anniversary special, which is on HBO Max, and we said in that final scene of that special, when all the big song at the end, there are 2 retired Sesame Street performers, and who are they? And that was Carol Spinney, who was Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch. Actually, this was shortly before he passed away, and also Fran Brill, who was a longtime performer, did Zoe and Little Bird and Prairie Dawn and a bunch of characters. Both of them can be seen in that final number along with the rest of the cast.
There you go. All right. Well, this week's episode, I'm actually going to pivot. I told you we were going to ask something else, but I'm going to pivot. We didn't even mention how Mackenzie Crook, who played Gareth, is on Pirates of the Caribbean. He's Rigetti, the pirate who had the wooden eye, and it falls out. If you watch it, I remember when I first watched the pilot.
Question.
Yeah, I remember when I first watched the pilot. I'm like, oh, it's Martin Freeman. Oh, it's Rigetti. Oh, it's Ricky Gervais. We all know him.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have the UK office. We have the US office. How many different versions of the office in other countries are there? Because it's not just those 2. So that's the question.
Can I guess, since I honestly have no idea, and then
you can guess, and then when we're done, I'll tell you if you were right or not, or how close you were.
I'm gonna go 8.
8 is a good guess. Whether it's correct or not,
I'll guess 11, because I also don't know.
Also a good guess, whether it's correct or not. All right, but you're gonna find out next week if it's correct. In the meantime, shoot Brian and I a happy birthday message. We're so needy. We need it, guys. It probably will. I don't know exactly when this is going to come out. I'm thinking it's late May, which will be after my anniversary and birthday and everything. So,
because when we're recording this, neither of us have had our birthdays yet.
Yeah, so we can still say happy birthday to each other. It's fine.
Yep.
It'll work. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm Paul.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.